Hello, BookTube, Erica here, and I'm back with kind of another discussion-y type video. And I wanted to talk today about DNFing books, which has been done before. Lots of people talk about DNFing books, but I think that not finishing a book is unique to everyone. And I would like to talk about what makes me put down a book forever, and what makes me put down a book and then maybe consider picking it up again later. So first of all, it took me a long time to realize that I could just put down a book that I was in the middle of and not finish it. I struggled with that for an inordinate amount of time. I don't understand why I didn't get that that was a thing I could do. I mean, I knew I could physically do it, but it was just like not allowed. I didn't let myself do that. It wasn't until about 2 years ago, maybe about 2.5, a little while before I started BookTube, that I was like, okay, if I'm not into this book by this and this point, I'm putting it down and I'm never picking it up again. So what makes me DNF a book? I usually give a book a good 50 to 150 pages before I'll put it down, depending on the size of the book, of course. But I have to really not like a book to DNF it. Because to me, DNF, which means do not finish, which I did, or did not finish, which I didn't say earlier, means that I'm never going back to that book. Like, I tried, I hated it, not for me. I have done that with a few books this year, last year, but I have to really, like, loathe the book. Like, not just not be into it at the time, but, like, have issues with it. I have to find it problematic. I have to find the writing style to be really terrible. It's not a matter for me of being immediately captivated by a book, because I like slower books and I'm okay with, you know, the payoff of character development in reading a book whose plot might be a little bit slower. I enjoy that, in fact. So it's not about being immediately gripped or taken in for me. It's generally that it makes me feel something in a bad way. Like, not only do I dread picking it up, but while I'm reading it, I actively hate the act of reading it, if that makes sense. So, for example, a couple years ago, I think, and this one comes to mind because I, like, had a very visceral reaction to this book, and I was reading John Updike's Rabbit Run, which is the first in a series, and is, you know, it gets a lot of praise and a lot of acclaim and is on a lot of, like, lists to read kind of book. And I hated it. And I hated it because I had a serious issue with the way that women were treated in the book, both in the writing itself and by the main character. So about 100 pages into it, I realized that not one good thing had been said about a female character, and that everything bad that had been said about a female character was really directed towards, like, their bodies and their sexuality. And I had huge issues with that book, and I basically threw it across the room and never picked it up again. So those kinds of things will make me DNF a book. I do generally give a book a fair shot, like I said, because I'm okay with kind of a slower start and a lot of character development. It takes me a while sometimes to DNF a book. I won't not finish a book, or decide not to finish a book after, you know, 25 pages or so. I'll invest a good amount of time in it to see if it's worth it. As I get older, that amount of time becomes less and less. But I don't set, like, a certain page going into the book. I don't think about the book when I pick it up as something that I might not finish. Generally, as I pick up a book, I'm going to finish it in my mind. It's when I get to about the 50-page mark and have found no redeeming qualities about the book, that I'll be like, okay, I'll give this another 50 pages, and if I still hate it, then never again. So that's kind of how I feel about DNFing. That being said, I have a DNF shelf on Goodreads for books that I did not finish. On Goodreads as well, and you can find my Goodreads link in the description if you are interested in looking at this. I also have a shelf that I've named Initiated, and those are books that, and this happens to me a lot, that I pick up, and after, like, the first 30 or 40 pages, I'm enjoying it, but it's not what I need right now. And so I'll put it down for a later date and time. And I know that I'm planning to come back to it because I didn't think it was a bad book. I didn't have issues with it. It just, I wasn't in the mood for it, really, because I'm a huge mood reader. as I feel like most people are, but it just wasn't working at the time. I needed something different, so I put it down. A lot of times, things like short story collections, essay collections, nonfiction gets put on my initiated shelf, just because I'll start, especially short stories and essay collections, I'll start and I'll read a few stories or essays, and then I'll put it down. But I'll put it down for like months. And what happens is, then it sits on my current, this is so weird, it sits on my currently reading shelf on Goodreads. And it gives me anxiety when I log into Goodreads, especially now that they've changed the layout where you're currently reading is like giant on the one side. Oh my gosh. So, and I'll just sit there and I'm like, but I'm not really currently actively reading that book. Like, I picked it up that one time, like maybe throughout the course of one afternoon, I read a few essays, but then I put it down. And so those books, if I haven't picked them up in a couple of weeks, I moved them to the initiated shelves on my Goodreads, which means that I started them. I didn't hate them, but it wasn't the time, and I'm going to come back to them later. So that's kind of a line of distinction, and especially in how I use Goodreads and how I shelf things on Goodreads, but also in how I think about books. So for example, I started reading Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde in like May. I'm still reading Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde. It's a very heavy book of essays. It's very pedantic. The subject matter is very heavy. It's giving me a lot to think about. I love the book. But it's taking me 7 months to read a less than 200 page book. And I just need definitely to be in kind of a very thoughtful, self-reflective, and kind of academic mindset when I go into that book. So it's not always going to be the thing that I reach for when I sit down to read. So that has come on and off my initiated shelf. And to my currently reading, and then back on again. And it might sound silly to you all, but it really stresses me out to have a lot of books in my currently reading, like more than 5, and I start to freak out because I do actively read 3 or 4 books at a time, but after that I just get stressed out about it. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What are your thoughts on not finishing books? Do you regularly DNF books, or are you the kind of person that always needs to see a book out to the end, which is totally fine too? Do you have anything in your life, kind of like my initiated shelf, where you kind of put books off for an extended period of time, or once you start a book, that's it, you're in it to win it, or you're not going to finish it kind of deal? Because I know people like that too. Do let me know in the comments, and I will see you all tomorrow for another Vlogmas video. Thank you so much. Bye.